The Jake Asman Show will begin shortly. Thanks to all these great Patreon members who help support the show. Get your super chats ready. Jake will be here in just a moment. If you love the New York Jets, this is the place to be. And now, the Jake Asman Show.
Garrett Wilson has made his opinion known. He wants Aaron Rodgers back at quarterback next year for the Jets. We'll talk about Garrett's comments and what they mean, plus much more on the state of the Jets. It is the Jake Asman Show. Let's hit it and get it started. Man, our Jets are primed for a historic season. Joe, I am not messing with you with what I'm about to say. Adam Schefter is reporting the Jets have just fired Robert Saleh.
Wow!
We bleed Jets green each and every day. This is not the same old Jets. We have Aaron freaking Rodgers. We have Garrett Wilson. Let's go. We have Breece Hall. Please subscribe and hit the like button below. Super chat, baby. Cut the line. We have Sauce Gardner. We have Quinnen Williams. The Jets bandwagon is loaded. Now it's time to talk all things New York Jets. It's the Jake Asman Show. Here we go, Jet fans. Welcome in, everybody. It is indeed the Jake Asman Show. Appreciate you spending some time with us on the channel. If you missed it earlier, we gave you a long show that was a lot of fun, had a lot of insights into the state of the team, and featured a fiery debate between me and one of the callers, Adam, who called in for the first time. And, well, I'll leave it at that. Ladies and gentlemen, I have some exciting news I want to share. I actually just found out about this right before I started the show. For the first time ever, I'm filling in on the Michael Kay Show this Friday. I said earlier I'd be on Black Friday from 6 to 9. Well, new plan. 3 to 7 on ESPN New York, you'll hear me and fellow Jet fan Ty Butler. So if you're in the car on Friday or you have the ESPN New York app, tune in from 3 to 7. First time I've done the afternoon time slot on the station, so I'm looking forward to that. Joining us right now, for the first time in a while, long overdue, is Jets X Factor Zone, Brandyn Pokrass. Brandyn, happy Thanksgiving, my friend.
Happy Thanksgiving to you, too. You know, the Jets are playoff bound so far, right? You know, since the last time we talked?
Well,
No.
you know, if you flip the record to 8-3, then I see what you're doing. But in this world, they're 3-8. And instead of talking about making a run in the playoffs, we're talking about the future of this team. And it's sad, but that's where we're at.
It's honestly crazy how far the conversation has shifted from like August when we were talking. You know, we were talking about the optimism and, you know, what to expect and different things. And what you saw at training camp and different practices and even some of the preseason stuff. And so much of that has not translated. It's been kind of impressive to see how quick it's honestly spiraled.
Well, you bring up like the practices over the summer. You were at a lot of them. That's when we had you on the most because, you know, you were covering this day in, day out, and you were providing observations. It's crazy because not everyone who was there like you were, and, you know, I was at 5 or 6 of them. Like, this is nothing what I saw. And I'll give you a great example. You and I were at the joint practice against the Commanders. Rodgers didn't even play that day. It was a monsoon, and Tyrod and that offense destroyed Washington. The defense dominated Jaden Daniels, and I'm thinking – Jets are going to be really good. I mean, look what they did. And I don't think Washington's going to be a good team this year, but they dominated them. Now, the Jets are the bad team, and the Commanders, up until these last couple of weeks, have been one of the darlings of the NFL this year, so go figure.
It inspired one of the articles I wrote because watching so much of this Jets offense, it was like, okay, where did all the motion and all the creativity from the training camp practices and the preseason go? Because it felt like, you know, okay, the Jets are actually going to make changes with this offense. They're actually going to use Garrett Wilson as the number one wideout that he's displayed he can be. They're actually going to move him around the formation and not just keep him on one side of the field. They're going to throw the ball to the tight end. They're going to motion Breece Hall out as a wideout. And there's been spurts of that. There's been times where that has worked. I mean, look no further than the Texans game, right? Feels like Garrett Wilson, that was what we saw in August. That is what we saw at those practices. But it just feels like the offense it was something completely different. It's like from the end of the preseason and training camp to week 1, everything just changed overnight. And I dove into it in that article. It seemed like a lot of stuff that they wanted to do and that they were doing in August kind of got overruled by what Rodgers likes to do with the staticness and not using motion and all that type of stuff. And that's why he likes Hackett so much, or liked Hackett so much. Then you have Downing, and it's just been more inconsistent now because you have some of these games where the motion rate is higher and you're specifically getting the ball to your best players, but then you kind of fall back into some of the pitfalls that you were having when you were struggling on offense, and then health goes into it. And it's been a really weird combination of things. And that's not even getting into the defensive side of the ball, which is just completely nosedive to a point where, look, I could have said, and I did say, I could see the defense taking a little bit of a step back, but to see the entire unit basically not even be close to an elite level, I don't think anyone saw that coming. So you have certain things like that where you can't predict the full scope of how an NFL season is going to go ever, right? You can only take the information that you have and put it towards your predictions because you don't know how a season is going to play out with injuries and different guys taking a step forward or step back. A lot of the stuff that happened this year, I would have never predicted, to be completely honest.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. It's crazy. And, talking about the future of this team, that's kind of where we're at. And Garrett Wilson made some comments on Kay Adams' program earlier today, and he was asked about his quarterback. He was asked about Aaron Rodgers' future and whether or not he wants him back with the New York Jets next season.
Obviously, I've really valued getting to know him over the last 2 years, and the way I approached this season coming into it was that this was our one chance to go and get it, right? So anything on top of that is like a cherry on top if he wants to come back. But obviously, it hasn't gone how we expected and wanted it to go. But with that said, it's still been a blessing, and it's still been something that I'll value for the rest of my life. So either way, I'm fulfilled. It's besides the fact we haven't won. But I just want Aaron to do what's best for him. At the end of the day, he earns to go out on his own. I don't know, his own mind state and feeling how he wants to feel. So whatever he wants to do, I know that we'll all support him and me being at the front of that for sure.
So it's the right answer there from Garrett. But here's the thing. We're talking about this decision as if it's Rodgers' decision alone, and it's really not. And I know Rodgers spoke right before you and I started doing the show together, Brandon, and he basically acknowledged what I'm about to say. He has to, want to play, and he has said if he does want to play, his first option, he wants to stay with the Jets. But it's also, does this new regime that comes in, do they want Aaron Rodgers as their quarterback next year? It's an easy decision if he's lighting it up this year. Of course you bring him back. But it's been an up and down year with, to me, more downs than ups, given the fact that the team's 3-8. So how do you view Aaron Rodgers' future with this team right now?
I mean, it's very interesting reading some of these quotes because it kind of sounds like someone resigned to his fate. Like the one quote I just came across where he's basically saying he's not worried about going out this way and kind of just being like, if it is the end, then it's the end. Just very different tone than what you heard 2 weeks ago, let alone 2 months ago. And, I think that's part of the Aaron Rodgers character, right? He's a very good media presence in the sense of he knows how to frame his words in the way that he wants to, right? He's not he's not naive to what's going on. He may act like he's naive, but he's not naive to what's going on. And I think when it comes to Aaron Rodgers, the player, at the end of the day, there is a shot he could be back, but you have to still get through. And this is the crazy part about this season. You still have to get through 6 games.
Right.
And we spoke about this before the season started, and things changed one way, but they're kind of coming back into focus. This is one of the hardest back halves of a schedule that you could have outside of Jacksonville.
Remember,
right?
It was supposed to be so easy. Every year we say how easy a schedule looks or how hard it looks, and no one actually knows because every year the NFL is wild and things change very quickly.
Like I'll put it to you like this, right? Seattle. 3 weeks ago, this seemed like a game that the Jets could have a great shot in. Guess what Mike McDonald's doing with that defense? Exactly the same thing that he did in Baltimore. That defense is starting to peak at the right time. And then, you throw the curveball of the West Coast team coming to the East Coast. Who knows how it goes? But I trust that type of coach in this game against an Aaron Rodgers whose mobility is all but gone at the moment. You still get the burst, but it's nowhere where it was at like in week 3 where we thought, okay, Aaron Rodgers is coming into his own. Then you get a hungry Miami team, which seems to be clicking on all cylinders. You have to play Buffalo again. You have to play the Rams, who are going to be competing for a division, let alone a playoff berth. You have to play Miami a second time. And like your only quote unquote walk in the park is Jacksonville, but you're kind of on that same level as Jacksonville. So you have all of these types of games. And then when it comes to the Rodgers thing in general, you can't make a decision right now, right? We see where it could be heading, but there's so much that can happen in 6 weeks of an NFL season that could convince an organization, that could convince a player, that could convince other players on the team to go in a specific direction. So as we're sitting here right now, right, day before Thanksgiving, November 27th, I would say I probably don't think Aaron Rodgers is back. I don't think it's the right decision necessarily to bring him back, because I think at the end of the day, you need to firmly go in a direction. I personally feel that retaining Aaron Rodgers for another year is just delaying the inevitable. Aaron Rodgers, if we want to be honest, the year was probably last year, and he got hurt. I personally thought he was still going to be this, at worst, average quarterback and maybe some flashes, but the idea with Rodgers is that he can buoy the offense to a point where your defense can help you win some games and the offense can help you win some games. That didn't happen. And what's Aaron Rodgers going to look like another year older, with arguably a possibly worse supporting cast and a team that, if you keep Rodgers, what's your direction? Do you trust the people hired, if candidates would want to come here with Rodgers, to go in that right direction? Whereas I think if you just split right now, you eat that dead cap money and you firmly get candidates in here that have a direction. Is it going to be the right direction? Is it going to be the right decisions? Who knows? That's a completely different conversation. But I think the Jets are at a point right now where they need to pick a direction, and the direction they need to go is firmly moving on from an era that was the right decision at the time, was the right move to take that home run swing after you miss on Zach Wilson, but it didn't work out. Because when teams start delaying the inevitable, that's how you get, a situation that could be fixed in 2 years become 4 years.
I completely agree with you. And I just think while things could change, based on what we have seen so far, Brandon, I don't think it warrants bringing him back. And that's why I'm going to be open-minded, because what if he did get healthy over the bye and he plays great down the stretch? A new regime might come in and be like, look, our other options aren't great. We're not picking high enough to get one of the top 2 guys. The journeyman quarterbacks that are out there aren't definitively better than Aaron, who's under contract, who wants to be here and wants to not go out the way last season ended. There's ways to convince me it makes sense to do it, but it starts with him playing well over these last 6 weeks. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, it's the decision right now, and that's the key part of the phrase, right now.
Right.
If the Jets all of a sudden look like world beaters these last few weeks, okay, maybe we can have a different conversation. Maybe it can be like, okay, if Rodgers actually can get healthy, maybe you can bridge that gap. But right now, that's just not reality.
Interesting quote from Rodgers right now. He said he'd be open to playing for a new coaching staff and a new scheme. And I've said this. People have been like, oh, is he going to want to learn a new offense? Well, he doesn't have a choice, because if he's here next year, Nate Hackett will not be here. Todd Downing, in all likelihood, will not be here. So Rodgers said, quote, I would say I love Nate, I love Todd, I love the staff, but them not being here would not be a deal breaker for me. So you bring in a real coach who brings in a real offense, all of a sudden, I don't think it's the craziest thing in the world that Aaron Rodgers is still here next year. It's why I think all these people saying it's foregone conclusion. He's done. He won't be here. You can't say that when you don't have a GM or coach in place right now. Come on.
Nothing is a foregone conclusion. It's not even a foregone conclusion that the owner is going to be different, right? We don't even know that aspect of things.
Right.
How could you know what the roster is going to look like, the coaching staff? There's too many moving pieces. You can say what it looks like, and yes, it looks a certain way. You can tell that Rodgers understands that it looks a certain way. But to say it's in stone, it would just be disingenuous in my eyes. I agree with that.
The quote from Rodgers I want to bring up. So remember 2 weeks ago, he was asked if he wants to play next year, and he said, I think so. And now he's talking about, if he plays next year, it's with the Jets. He was asked why the change in this stance, and he said, quote, if you look at what transpired in those 2 weeks, Joe got axed. Joe brought me here. There's uncertainty with everybody on the staff, so I'm not naive to what the situation is. If a new GM comes in and they don't retain Brick, I have to fit in those plans. Like I said on Pat's show, this is my first option. I love the play here. If I end up deciding to play, but there's got to be the want for them to want to bring me back and for me to want to play. But I think so was the truth, and I'm not 100% sure is also the truth today. I mean, he was brought in to play with a completely different regime that's going to be here next year. So that's the reality. Like, there's still 6 games. The Jets themselves with the new regime have to want him, and he's going to have to want to play next year. So it's impossible to break down his future with 6 weeks to go in the year on November 27th, despite what the national media and the pundits, they want to tell you that it's been decided. It hasn't been decided. There's too much of an unknown. And as you brought up brilliantly, the owner of the team could be different. It could go from Woody to Chris. Like, that's part of this too.
There's just too many moving parts. And that's the line of thinking, like, I'll stick by. It looks like it. Everything is saying that it looks to be that way. But nothing can be set in stone until it actually happens, right? We've seen this happen with the Jets before, right? Anyone who's followed this team and has been around this team for an extended period knows that there have been things that have looked like foregone conclusions that simply just haven't happened. And that's the thing to keep in mind as we go along here. And that also ties into your quarterback options, because I've talked to people, have asked, like, okay, what are the quarterback options for this team? And my legitimate answer to them is, I can't tell you until I know what their final record is. Because if they're picking like top 4, it's a different answer than if they're picking anywhere from 5 to like 7. It's a different answer if they're picking 8 to 10. Because that's the type of draft class we're dealing with. We're not dealing with, Caleb and Drake May and Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix and Michael Penix, right? If this is the draft class where the Jets are having this type of season, the answer is you're drafting a quarterback. You are doing everything in your power to draft a quarterback. There's a lot of uncertainty this year. And I think the worst possible thing for the Jets would be forcing a young quarterback, right? We've seen what that looks like when you force the quarterback instead of picking the right quarterback. I'm of the viewpoint where if the guy isn't there in the first round, you take the guy in the second round, see how he develops, and oh no, if you have a bad season in 2025, maybe it's a better quarterback class, and now you have a guy that you think is your long-term backup along with your future guy, and maybe you have them compete, right? You can never take too many quarterbacks. You got to keep swinging the bat until you hit that home run. But the part that not a lot of people discuss is it's like pitch selection. You have to swing at the right pitches. You can't just swing aimlessly.
Pitch selection, baby. How about that? Brandon giving us a little baseball analogy on a football show. Love it. Super chat from Tyrone. Aaron will blow it to end 9-8. He'd be back. Go Jets. I feel like saying he'd blow it, but then rattle off 6 in a row is contradicting yourself, Tyrone. But I do appreciate the super chat. Jets finished 9-8. They rattle off 6 straight. I think Jets X Factor said it's a 58% chance of making the playoffs if they finish 9-8. It's not going to happen, but I'm rooting for 9-8 until they're actually eliminated, Tyrone. So I'm right there with you.
I think we'd be having a lot of different conversations if the Jets somehow made it back to 9-8, let alone 500.
I still would bring in a new coaching staff, but that would be impressive by Brick.
Yeah, it just feel, when you feel like it's like the dead men walking, it just, until you get the thing that tells you there's a spark, it just, that's what it feels like at the moment. Right? Because, and this is how I've observed things, and this is how I think about things now. You can say whatever you want in a press conference. You can say whatever you want, to the media. It's about what your actions display. What do your actions on the field and everything along those lines display? So for the Jets this week, they're saying, oh yeah, we made some tweaks. We did this, we did that. Number one, they didn't change any of the play calling stuff. So without that explicit change, without any explicit personnel changes, what does it look like on the field? That'll be your answer to see, hey, does this team have some fight left? Or are they just in the mindset of, okay, we just got to get through this season?
Brian says if they run the table and make the playoffs, Ulbrich comes back. He might. I don't know. Honestly, be careful giving the interim the job, right? We saw this happen with Antonio Pierce. It typically doesn't work. It would have been different with Ulbrich because he had, obviously, after the first 5 games, he had a 12-game sample size. But I'm weary of forgetting about the first 6 and only focusing on the last 6. I think it's a little different. I don't know.
And also, it's like football is a weird sport, right? The interim boost, like different things. I don't think when you look at interim coaches, the problem with keeping Ulbrich would be, are you keeping the rest of Saleh's staff? Are you keeping everyone on board? You can't do that. Even if you somehow pulled off that type of running the table, I don't think you can keep the staff. It's not the type of staff that you need to take into the next quote unquote era of Jets football.
Hit the like button if you're tuning in. I want to thank all the Asmaniacs for supporting the show. Make sure if you're a Patreon member, you check the Discord later today. I'll also make a separate post on Patreon. I'm going to do a Black Friday special. Normally, if you're a Patreon member, you get every item in the merch store 15% off year round. But in honor of Black Friday, we'll do a Thanksgiving weekend sale. I'll drop a promo code for 25% off every item in the merch store. So if you're thinking about buying any item from the jakeasman.com merch store, join the Patreon first. And for this weekend alone, you'll get 25% off every item in the store. So that's exclusive for Patreon members. So normally it's 15%. It'll be 25% for Black Friday / Cyber Monday. So get ready for that coming up. I want to get to this comment here from Mo, who says, I think Rodgers realizes he doesn't have any options other than with the Jets to retire, which is why he's open to a new offense. Well, maybe, but I also think if his preference is truly, hey, he doesn't want to move again, he wants to stay in New York, he's comfortable here, then you know what? Be willing to learn a new offense, because then you could be the Jet quarterback potentially next year if they bring in a new regime that looks at you as the best option while they maybe draft someone behind you.
You can always go to the Giants, right? No.
He could, but I think they're going to draft the quarterback, but he could. No. Yeah.
But in all seriousness, like, I think the Rodgers thing, just in and of himself, the 6 weeks is so important, because what happens if another team across the NFL suddenly has this type of end of the season where they're like, all right, if we get a different quarterback in here, we can be pushed over the top, kind of similar to what the Jets thought when they first acquired Rodgers. Now, I think that you never truly know what a team is thinking until they actually do something. But I think it's very important to keep an eye on different things around the league with that, where I think the perfect situation, I would call it, is maybe a team that no one expects to get close to the playoffs or finish strong to the end of the season, finishes strong, and they're like, okay, the rest of our team looks like X, but we need quarterback to reach our desired landing point. Like, it's very interesting how those things occur, but I wouldn't say that it's a completely zero chance that Rodgers plays for another team.
It could happen. I don't know the team right now, right? And I would need to know how Rodgers finishes, right? Like, what if he plays reasonably well, but this regime just comes in and just doesn't want to deal with it? And they're just like, you know what? We are just moving on. We have a plan to get our quarterback, but we're just going to take the dead cap it all in one. We're not going to push it down the line. Then maybe there's a team that would want him. But would you agree he's got to show a lot more of these final 6 if he's on a different team next year?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think the main way that happens is Rodgers plays relatively decent to well, but the Jets defense just isn't there anymore. Like, kind of like the flashes we've seen in some of these games, but it just gets to a point where they're just checked out. Kind of an inverse of what we've seen in previous seasons. But I think that's one of the only ways that another team is like, okay, we can convince ourselves that Aaron Rodgers can work for us.
That's probably the only way. I think you're right about that one. Comments, questions, super chats. They'll cut the line. Hit the like button if you're tuning in. Thanks to Brandyn Pokrass for hanging out with us here on the show. You can read his work over at jetsxfactor.com. JT says the merch is fire, by the way, y'all. Definitely consider it. Thank you, JT. I appreciate your support there. Mo Sports Talk wrote in, "Sup, chat. My son was scared to tell me he failed his history exam. I said, don't worry. It's all in the past." Your thoughts on that one, Brandon?
Love some comedy. Great one right there.
You can tell that really moved you. Anyway, more from Garrett Wilson here. This I found to be interesting. So Garrett Wilson was asked, with the team at 3-8, what personal goals do you have left this season?
What is success for Garrett Wilson at the end of this season?
Obviously, I just want to keep this. I want to find a way to get to 1,000, and keep this streak going, as long as possible. I feel like when I look at guys like Mike Evans and stuff like that, like the main thing I think about is their consistency and how no matter what may have happened, in the in-between, as far as seasons, they always found a way to put their stamp on it and get to 1,000, right? So can't have 9 straight years, 5 straight years doing it if you don't have 3. So that's where I want to get to, and that's really it. But obviously win a lot of games during that, and I feel like the way to do that is to play my part. I feel like I have a big role in this team to get us to where we want to go and win those games. And I think naturally it'll happen if we want to, finish this thing the right way.
I've said it. If he remains a Jet for the vast majority of his career, he's got a chance to break every record this franchise has had. He's already gone over 1,000 yards, as he alluded to there, in his first 2 years. Right now he's at 722 receiving yards. 6 games are left. He should easily eclipse that if he's healthy. I'm knocking on wood on Garrett Wilson's behalf right now. But this is a guy that has proven to be quarterback proof. He had 8 different quarterbacks throwing to him before this season. Now he's got Rodgers, who while he has not been great, he's certainly the best quarterback Garrett has played with so far. And Garrett has been one of the best receivers in the NFL. So, to me, without question, this is a guy that you want to keep for the long term, but I think he's definitely going to get to over 1,000 if he's healthy, right, Brandon?
They got to feature him more in the offense again. It's been very weird the past few weeks, right? It's like the Houston game happens. He shows you, hey, he can be this awesome downfield receiving threat too.
Right.
What have his only targets been after that? Quick screens and slants. Where did this aspect for him as a player go? I agree. He should get to it, but the Jets have to do a better job of targeting him, even in the intermediate area down the field, deep down the field, and just pepper him with targets. It's tied in explicitly to Aaron Rodgers. When Aaron Rodgers has chosen to not push the ball down the field or even to the intermediate area, he just peppers Devontae Adams with targets. It's a comfortability thing for him, evidently, and Garrett Wilson is just not getting that same amount of targets. The Jets, to win football games in general, need to open the offense up, but I think for Garrett Wilson to truly get to that number, they gotta feature him in the offense. And look, I know the news broke today, but if Breece Hall isn't gonna play, Garrett Wilson's got to be the guy that you funnel your offense through. He's got to be the one that gets 10 plus targets a game. He's got to be the guy that carries your offense, because otherwise, you're not gonna have that explosive playmaker that you can get the ball to consistently. He's got to be the one.
It baffles me how he's not automatically getting 10 plus targets every game,
It's been this way for the entire time he's been here. There's a game where, hey, we give him 10 targets and he's just completely dynamic, looks like a top 10 wide receiver in football. And then for 2 games, he disappears because they throw him the ball twice. It's not just on Garrett Wilson. It's on the offense to scheme him touches. It's on the offense to get him in the positions, circling back to the beginning of the show, like they did in the summer, like they did when they motioned him in the slot and got him better matchups. It's not just on the wideout. And that's the frustrating thing about this Jets regime, this Jets offense, that it's like, okay, they're not doing everything in their power to get their best players the football all the time. It took until last week for Breece Hall to basically get over, 20 touches? And look what happened. or not last week, their last game. Look what happened when he touched the ball that much. Oh, he looks like the best player on the field. Shocker. But there's some weeks they give him 10 touches because reasons. It's personally for me, outside of the defense, it's the most frustrating aspect of this Jets team. The fact that you have two bona fide superstars that have shown you their ability when they get consistent touches, but the Jets just refuse to scheme up. I'm not even saying like, okay, they got to scheme it up all the time. You scheme up 3 to 4 or even 5 touches for them a game outside of your normal game flow, it can make a huge difference. And they just refuse to do that all the time.
It's mind-boggling, man. And look, you could say that with how they've at times not featured Brees the way he should, with just the amount of touches he can get. Like, he hasn't had a game yet. He hasn't had 20 or more carries. It's frustrating. And look, I don't know if Rodgers is here next year, but you got to hope and pray that the offensive staff they do bring in is a lot better than this, because for this team to be 3-8, despite some of the names that are out there on the field, it is a joke.
Yeah, it's it's definitely not good, to put it lightly.
Let's see. Johnny Boy wants to know, what should Aurora name her cat?
Ooh, I'm a dog person, but I like espresso and pumpkin. Maybe, I'm not gonna. I would have to see what this cat looks like, because I just names off top of the head. You got the name has to match, right? You can't just throw a name out there. Like it has to match.
25 writes in, Happy Turkey Day Eve. Go Jets. Like the 33rd hires. Let's get into that right now. We'll use that as a jumping off point. What was your reaction, Brandon, to the 33rd team? Tannenbaum, Spielman leading the search for the next general manager and head coach of the Jets.
At the end of the day, you have no idea how it's going to go. You have no idea how any coaching search or GM search is going to go. It is a crapshoot. It has always been a crapshoot. Even the best processes sometimes don't work out. But when it comes to the New York Jets specifically, anything is better than leaving them to their own devices. This team could not, especially in light of the, decisions they made and how things have been run, they could not be left to their own devices, and they needed adults in the room to help them. And there's no guarantee that the Jets listen to them, but the fact that you have a guy like Spielman, who, by all intents and purposes, helped set up the Commanders for success this year, the fact that you have Tannenbaum, who wasn't a perfect GM, but it's been the most successful GM the Jets have had in the past decade plus, they have NFL experience, NFL contacts, and know at the end of the day how to get people in an organization that are smart and, smart in theory and know how to run a team. That is better than what the Jets would have likely done without them. It's better than relying on some random search firm. So I'm going to keep an open mind, have no idea how this is going to go. Let's see what the candidates are. Let's see how this process goes. And as I've always said, outside of the Adam Gase hire, which I thought was crap right off the beginning and knew it was going to be a disaster and was scared for what Darnold would be under him and ended up being proven correct. Outside of that, you got to let the results play out. And that's really where I stand with it.
Jets Chaos says Tannenbaum was the opposite of successful. Come on, guys. The way Tannenbaum gets covered, it's like he's Joe Douglas or John Izek or Mike McCagnon. Mike Tannenbaum hired 2 different coaches that both went to the playoffs with the Jets. And obviously, it got worse as it went on. But the first couple of years of him and Rex together, it was exactly what this franchise needed. Tannenbaum made the right trades, the right free agent signings. They supplemented it with some quality draft picks. Let's not act like it was all bad for Mike Tannenbaum. And also, just him being in the room, knowing what it's like to be the Jet GM in this market, and also the type of candidate you need to be able to deal with Woody. Like, there's value in that. I like the fact that Tannenbaum's involved, and I also like the fact Rick Spielman's involved, because he was a very successful general manager, and he did the same exact thing last year for Washington. So he's got experience with some of the candidates the Jets are actually going to be interviewing again, which makes a lot of sense.
And at the end of the day, Tannenbaum helped Mangini build those teams, right? They were there together. And then Tannenbaum hires Rex, right? Mangini, I would love if Mangini got an interview for another front office job with this team. I think he did a great job. But it wasn't just him by himself, right? Tannenbaum was also involved there. And no one's saying, the Tannenbaum thing's perfect. Yes, Tannenbaum had plenty of issues. But at the end of the day, it is better than the alternatives that this team could have used. He has experience. He has contacts. No one's saying that Mike Tannenbaum is the president of football operations for the New York Jets. No one is saying that he is going to be the guy in charge for the Jets. He is leading a search alongside Spielman. Is he spearheading the search? Yes. But it is better to have that type of football knowledge and football experience help guide this process than have Woody Johnson and the people he brings aboard do it. You'd rather have, at the end of the day, football people than non-football people. And that's where I fall with it right now.
Ladies and gentlemen, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Appreciate all of you. Now, I have officially posted it in both the Discord and made a post on Patreon. Patreon users, there's a new promo code for 25% off. Black Friday special from now through Cyber Monday. Every item in the merch store is 25% off for Black Friday. It's normally 15. Now it's 25. So for anyone who was not around when we launched this merch store over the summer, check it out. jakeasman.com/shop. 25% off all items. If you're a Patreon member, just use the code that I shared in the group. Let's see. Comments, questions, super chats. We'll cut the line. I do want to address this guy, Una Too Cold. He goes, Jake, I love you and what you do, but you flip floppy as the Win Brothers. Then I asked him in the chat as you were talking there, Brandon, I go, what did I flip flop on? He goes, bro, if you go back and watch your videos, you flip flop your take. You got in a screaming match with a dude before Salah got fired about Salah shouldn't be fired. Then he does. Well, I would simply ask you this. When was the argument from? Because if you called in after week 1 and said Salah should have been fired, I probably said that's ridiculous. And even when they fired Robert Salah, I didn't say that I would fire him after the Vikings game. I did say, though, if they fired him if they lost to Buffalo, I wouldn't be surprised, and I wouldn't have been against it at that point. I thought it was a week earlier than when they were going to do it. That was my take on Salah. And now he brings up an example here. He goes, and then you go, yeah, man, I agree it's the right move. Then a few weeks later, you're like, they shouldn't have fired him. Una, I don't think you're understanding here. We're saying in hindsight, firing Salah didn't work. Not that it was a mistake to fire him. I thought it was a little early to fire him. But I was all for that if they lost to Buffalo, potentially making a change. As it's turned out, Ulbrich wasn't ready for the role, and we probably underestimated the type of impact it would do to the defense. It would have on the defense and the locker room. These are opinions that we could acknowledge whether we're right or wrong over time. It's not flip-flopping. It's called just having information. It's not that hard.
Well, the cool thing is with takes, takes change over time because you get more information. You have the fuller picture, and you can evaluate these different things, right?
Okay, well, here it is, Brandon. He goes, this apparent screaming match I had with someone over Salah was a week before he was fired. Okay, so someone probably called in and said, fire him after Denver. And I'm like, you're not firing your head coach at 2-2. So I stand by that, all right? You didn't have this gotcha moment, Una. But thanks for the watching. Appreciate you keeping track of my opinions, which are documented every day, twice a day for the last 4 years I've been doing this show.
Yeah, look, opinions change over time. You get more information, you can make more informed takes, right? When Salah was fired, it looked like the Jets were lifeless. It looked like this team was heading towards where they're heading now, but you didn't know how Ulbrich would fare, right? You could say the same thing for Rodgers with the defense, etc. The takes that you have in the offseason, some may be right and some may be completely off base, but that's because you're operating with a limited base of knowledge. When you have more knowledge and more information of how things pan out, you can make better takes. That's how it works.
I mean, my big thing was I didn't want Salah fired at the end of last year unless Douglas was gone with him. To me, it was either they're both gone or they're both back. Knowing what I know now and how just in over their heads they were this year collectively as a coaching staff, I would change my stance from a year ago. I'd say, fire Salah, get a real coach going into this year. I'll deal with Douglas for another year. But, I mean, you never know how it's going to play out. I mean,
exactly.
That's what happens here. So, anyway, nice try with the gotcha moment, Una. But unlike other people, I'll admit when I'm wrong. And it was wrong to keep Salah going into this year. They should have made a change at the end of last year if he was only going to get 5 games going into this year. I mean, that's the whole thing, right? But here's my thing with Salah too, Brandon. Even if they kept him, I don't know if this team was ever going to achieve anything what we thought they were going to do. Like, I think they'd be better. The defense wouldn't have regressed. They're probably better than 3-8 right now. I think every Jet fan should acknowledge that. But is this team winning 9 or 10 games and making the playoffs this year? I mean, they were 2-3 when they fired him. And think about the most recent 2 games they lost when he was here. The disgusting debacle against Denver, and they came out as flat as a pancake. I was at that game in London, down 17-0 in that one. So maybe it wouldn't have spiraled as quickly as it did if they kept him, but I don't know if they would have been in that much better of a situation.
I think at the end of the day, the truth is, and you said it, if they were going to fire him, it should have been at the end of last season. It should have been, okay, we know where this is heading. We're just going to move on, get a different guy in here, and see how the season goes with a new guy in charge, right? A new staff in charge. I think this season, to be honest, I think you were going to end up at the same point that we're at now, just not as dire. Like, I think the Jets are probably sitting at 4 wins, maybe at best, instead of 3, or maybe 5 wins at best instead of 3. And that still doesn't make a ton of difference, right? You still have this back half of the schedule where you're dealing with, basically, outside of Jacksonville, you're dealing with all teams that are going to be competing for playoff
with
seeding,
better coaches. Like Mike McDaniel, better coach than Robert Saleh. Sean McVay, better coach than Robert Saleh. Who else they got? McDermott, better coach. Although, like, that's the one thing why I thought Saleh was going to get the Buffalo game. McDermott's a better coach, obviously, but for whatever reason, the Jets with Saleh had played well against Buffalo. It's why I thought if Saleh was going to be fired, I thought it would be after the Bills game, not after the Viking game.
But you were going to be playing all hungry teams. And by all accounts, up until that point of the season when Saleh was fired, they didn't have that fire that they had in 22, right? It looked completely different. And that also goes into some of the moves that were made, some of the guys that weren't brought back. There's a whole laundry list of different things for you to arrive at this point with the Jets. But at the end of the day, you were just delaying the inevitable by keeping him, right? And who knows how it pans out if you do keep him. But I think you're arriving at the same point this season with the Jets. Saleh, retaining him doesn't change Aaron Rodgers getting hurt this season. Doesn't change how the personnel on defense looks. Doesn't change some of the effort level. You would have arrived at the same point. It's just happening a lot faster, and you're understanding where this team is at. And quite frankly, if you really want to, throw caution to the wind with a take, it's probably better that the Jets know what they are instead of delaying the inevitable.
Now that is a take right there. That is a take by Brandyn Pokrass. Comments, questions, super chats. We'll cut the line. Not going to be as long of a show as normal. I'm off to the Islander game tonight. I'll watch another losing franchise in action. So there we go. The Hamburger writes in, I do think Rodgers finishes strong enough to make the decision hard for the new GM. A healthy Rodgers, good coaching, and drafting a young quarterback would be best. I mean, look, if Rodgers finishes strong and makes the decision hard, that's all you could ask for. He finishes strong. He's healthy. Because even if he's not here next year, maybe you could get something from him if you're going to trade him too. That's part of this as well.
I think my biggest question, and to play devil's advocate here, what does a healthy 41-year-old Rodgers look like? Right?
Is he anywhere close to that Patriot performance in the home opener you and I were at? And
that's the question, right? What does the healthy version of Aaron Rodgers next year look like? Because in my opinion, it's the baseline of, I don't know if it's the same baseline as this year and not the same baseline as 23. What does that look like if he finishes strong? That's the question the Jets have to ask themselves. Because is 41-year-old Rodgers better than Tyrod or Tyrod? Is it better than Jameis? Is it better than some of these other options you could go with? That's the main question the Jets would have to answer if they were like, okay, are we going to keep him or not?
I got to see a couple games like the Patriots one, because that shows me he's healthy and he's still capable of being an upper echelon quarterback at times,
Yes, 100%.
Let's see. Because, it's crazy because, we know what it looks like with him doing that as a Jet. We only got one game of it, though, unfortunately.
Yes, and it's like, okay, little thought experiment. You keep Rodgers and you head into the 2025 season with him at quarterback. What if he gets hurt week 2? you're immediately turning to the rookie or the other veteran that you brought in, and now you have to eat the money again in 25 or after 20. Like, those are the questions you have to ask when it comes to bringing Rodgers back, because as thin of a line you were walking in 24, it's going to be even thinner in 25.
100%. Let me see. There was a comment here from Jets Chaos I agree with. Letting a coach go after 5 games when you're about to play for the division lead was a stupid emotional overreaction. Yeah, the time to do it would have been probably after losing that game, right? Or after that stretch where you played the Steelers if you lost that game anyway, and then you were 2-5. At 2-5, I think it's more understandable. Doing it at 2-3, that in hindsight was a mistake. And Woody's got to own that. It happened. It is what it is at this point. You can't change it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the talk of the move at the time was that he was trying to get ahead of,
right?
Okay, we lose to Buffalo, we lose to Minnesota. Our season's cooked. And guess what?
Season was cooked.
Kind of ended up happening anyway, but
it was like what V-Man was cooking on the show yesterday. It was that kind of cooked. Tough. This guy, Frank, I'm pretty sure we put him in the shadow realm, but I guess he made a new account. He says, Jake, after the Pittsburgh game, you were super high on Zach. Oh, sue me, Frank. You got me. I can't believe I can't believe I was high on Zach Wilson after his first game back from injury. He led the Jets down 10 in the fourth quarter to a comeback win. I can't believe as a Jet fan I was high on the second-year quarterback coming off injury after he did finish his rookie year playing a lot better than how his rookie year started. Wow, you really got me, Frank. I was excited. Zach Wilson led the Jets with a huge comeback win that day in Pittsburgh. Unfortunately, he never built off those type of performances we got. That was the issue with Zach. I tried to be patient with him. This was when I was called a Zach Wilson truther. So it's amazing to me how Frank. Thank you, Frank. You really got me with that one. I was the only Jet fan who was pumped after Zach Wilson played great in the fourth quarter and led a game-winning drive on the road in a hostile environment.
I'm sure no Jet fans were excited when Zach Wilson went toe-to-toe with Tom Brady too, right?
God.
The internet's a fun place. The internet's a very fun place, and I'll leave it at that.
If you want to talk to Brandyn, you can open phone lines to join the show. Jets Chaos says, what Jet fan wasn't high on Zach after the game? We all were. And then they beat the Dolphins, and Zach, he wasn't asked to do a lot that game, but statistically he was fine, right? Brees Hall had like 200 all-purpose yards that day, and that was the start of the winning streak where they were winning. But there were some games in there where Zach was throwing for like 125 passing yards, but Brees was unreal. The defense was incredible, and that's what kind of led to Rodgers in the first place. That start, they were 6-3. Zach obviously was horrific against New England. Then he played a competent game against Buffalo. They won that game as a double-digit underdog going into the bye week, right? And then
7-4.
Well, the New England game happened, so they bench him after the second Pats game. Mike White comes in, looks great, gets hurt. So that team goes from 7-4 to completely collapsing down the stretch. But it's like, well, they were 7-4, 6-3 with no quarterback. So the whole idea of bringing in Rodgers was right. But the reason why they had to bring in Aaron Rodgers was because they missed on the second pick in the draft. That's where this all began.
The optimism on Zach remained until that New England game, because it was after that New England game where he makes the comment and nothing was the same after that. That's your inflection point. And your other inflection point was the Braxton Berrios drop. Because if Berrios catches that touchdown, we might be talking about the playoff drought being over that season. Right? We might be talking about the New York Jets being in the 2022 playoffs. And then if Mike White leads that, you most likely don't trade for Rodgers. You go into that it's a whole sliding doors moment. But I feel like the true split with the Jets and Zach really started after the Patriots game, when it looked like, okay, it's year 2 and he's still repeating the rookie year mistakes. And that's the biggest thing, right? The rookie season, you had the lows, but you had that end of the season. Right. You know, the sophomore start, the injury, but he comes back and it looks like he's starting to build towards something. And then it all falls apart. And it was after that Patriots game where a lot of people were like, all right, I'm out. You still had the ups and downs, but it was never the same after that. That's the truth.
Yeah, it just and that led us down this path, which got us to a 3-8 season in an all-in year. Ladies and gentlemen, I am so excited about this. Frank writes in, Jake and Garrett Wilson have been mid at best. For you wanting to pay him is ludicrous. We could get top value for him and save on the cap. So Garrett Wilson this year is 5th in the NFL in receptions, 12th in yards, tied for 13th in touchdowns scored. And you're saying he's been mid, which stands for mediocre for the olds out there. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and privilege to end Frank's day. Frank, you are a moron. Kiss my ass. Happy Thanksgiving.
Now look what you've done. No more protection from the Asmaniacs. Had to pull you out of the chat and cast you down with the sodomites. Some time in here will feel like you've been run over by the lane train. You understand me? You catch my drift? Give him another 24 hours to think about it.
We'll see you later, Frank. Garrett Wilson is mid.
I know we're not calling Garrett Wilson mid on this show, right? Like I look, I get it. Does he not always like produce 100-yard games? No, but no wide receiver does. Justin Jefferson just had that type of game. Is anyone going out and calling Justin Jefferson mid? Like I'm begging people, please just use nuance when you're talking about this
people
kind
are
of
idiots.
stuff.
Just call it for what they are, Brandon. That guy is an idiot. All right, I don't have
I'm
to
trying
be
to
nice.
be nice.
I don't know. We don't have to be nice. All right,
It's Thanksgiving.
My show, I'm not being. I don't care. Happy Thanksgiving, Frank. You bozo. All right. I mean, give me a break. Garrett Wilson is one of the best players on this team. If you watch the games and don't even just look at the stats, you see that. You see how, as you were talking about, how underutilized he could be in this offense at times as well. And like, here's the thing with Garrett. Look at some other receivers in the league and when they became stars. Garrett's ahead of schedule. Devontae Adams wasn't Devontae till his 3rd year. Garrett's already had 2 1,000-yard seasons. You know, no Jet ever has started their career at that position with back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. Like, this guy, if he remains a Jet for most of his career, hopefully his entire career, he'll go down as one of the best players this franchise has ever had, and you absolutely pay him.
Yeah, I'll save my grievances for Festivus.
Joe the Jet writes in, GW has been the solution, not the problem. Yeah, I mean, come on now.
He's also one of the best. He's one of the best leaders on the team.
Yes,
like he's a guy you build your franchise around.
100%. And I'm worried if they don't pay him, he's going to request a trade because he's not going to want to put up with the nonsense here anymore. You got to figure it out.
Good grief.
Pain. We'll take a couple calls here for anyone who wants in. Let's say hello to Jay. He's first up with Brandon and I. Hey, Jay.
Fellas, how you doing today?
What's up, Jay?
Yeah.
You know, you never call this show anymore, Jay. I miss you. I see you on the Bobby show more than this show.
I'm calling right now, man. I missed you too, bro. Listen, today it's been one of your shows, man. Earlier today, I was listening, and I was like 20 minutes behind Adam J, right? And then I just see the chat going crazy still about Adam J. I said, there's no way he was on the phone for 20 minutes. So I fast forward, and he's on again, just going crazy. There's a few things I want to say. First of all, you cannot expect Jake to have just takes that even the professionals don't even have. Like you said, like when you get information, when things change, that's how you evaluate things. You know what I'm saying? Me personally, I didn't want Salah to go at that time, but like I didn't think this would happen when he was gone. You know what I'm saying? Like
I didn't either. I didn't either, Jay. I thought maybe it was a week too early, if you remember. But like, even if you wanted Salah to still have a job like you, like, there's no way you thought this team would collapse the way they did. No way.
Exactly. No, exactly. And it's just crazy to me. A few things I want to bring up. First thing with Garrett Wilson, we need to give him targets, man. Like, it's just like watching every other offense. Like, you have to get your best players involved. Why are we not putting them on comeback routes? Why is he not running out and ups? Why is he not getting the ball in space, drag routes? Why are we not putting him in motion and bunch formation? You know, these are what these elite teams do, man. They just find ways to get their players the ball. And we don't do that at all, man. It's just sad to me.
You imagine
just-
Garrett Wilson in the Chiefs offense or Lions offense?
What about the
It'd be
Rams?
ridiculous.
The Rams offense? Yeah.
And like I just feel like underutilized our players a lot. And the whole Sauce thing, I know Sauce has been having a bad season, but like you don't just trade your good players because they're having down seasons, man. You sit there, you try to look at the situation. Like we're 3-8. No one's having a good season. You can say no one is having a good season at 3-8. Everyone needs to be reevaluated, right? Every position needs to be reevaluated. Don't single out Sauce Gardner, who's been an All-Pro for the last 2 years. You know what I'm saying? Like, just wait. Just build. I know we're not going to go to the playoffs now, but a rebuild doesn't take 5-10 years. You get the right people in, you get a good quarterback, you get a good coaching staff. Who knows what happened? You know what I'm saying? Washington was, 2-14? 2-15, 3-14 last year. And look at them now. You know what I'm saying? So, guys, I know it's dark. I know we had huge expectations about Super Bowl and stuff. But man, we're the Jets. We sucked for so long, man. What's one more year, right?
Hey, it's what we do best, Jay.
Thank you, Jake.
Jay, happy Thanksgiving, man.
Happy Thanksgiving, guys. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, three siblings, Jay, checking in. I mean, look, contrary to what the Jets have tried to feed their fans in the past, rebuilds don't need to take multiple years if you have the right people in charge. And unlike other Jet, quote-unquote, rebuilds or regime changes, Brandon, there's still a lot of talent that's under contract that's here next year.
Now, the hard thing is, how do you decide who to pay, who to
Right.
keep, who to trade? I think the Sauce thing's really interesting because I think it'll come down to, honestly, the new regime, how they view him, how they view Brees, because running back contracts, I think they're starting to swing back the other direction, but it'll be interesting to see how they handle that. Jermaine coming off the injury, and then you have some of the veteran. Like, you're right. The talent is there. This isn't a barren cupboard, but it all comes down to do the people in place make the right decisions on how to build this roster? And we don't know yet, and we won't know yet.
Ladies and gentlemen, no one has gifted a membership yet. And in honor of Thanksgiving, I wanted to gift one channel membership to one lucky Asmaniac because I'm thankful for all the Asmaniacs. If you hear your name called, you're a channel member. Stephen B., you are the recipient of the membership. Welcome, welcome, welcome. If you missed the announcement, all Patreon users, merch store for Black Friday through Cyber Monday, 25% off using the promo code I listed in the Patreon or Discord announcement tab. So check that out if you want to get yourself some merch that will definitely arrive before Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever you celebrate. Do they do gifts for Kwanzaa, Brandon? I don't even know.
I wouldn't know.
If anyone knows the answer to that one, please let us know. We would appreciate it. Let's see. Purple Belt Mike says, can't believe we're watching poop offense again.
Yeah.
Jets football,
Not ideal.
baby.
Not
Poop
ideal.
offense. If you want to watch real offense, you get to watch the Lions offense for the first game of the day tomorrow. That'll be fun. Future Jet head coach Ben Johnson. Right, Brandon?
Oh, wouldn't that be nice?
Last chance to get in here. David writes in, Jake spreading the Thanksgiving cheer just as long as it isn't a Bronx cheer. That's right. Three Siblings says, Jake sounds like Allen right now. Yeah, we know Allen has a Lions fetish. A weirdo. Brandon writes in, rebuilds cannot be consummated till multiple years of improvement at QB of the future of the roster. Jets looking more for lightning in the bottle if they want to be competitive next year. It doesn't have to be lightning in the bottle, though. You know what I mean? Like, if you have a good coach, you're like Mike Tomlin does it every year with different quarterbacks who have been very mediocre. Like, good coaching gives you a chance. Like, the Browns lost Deshaun Watson last year, but they found a way with their situation to still get in with Flacco, and who I think they had a couple other guys start games for them too last year. Like, that's the point. Like, if you have a really good coach, you have a chance. And like, the one thing the Jets should have next year is a good defense, no matter who the coach is, assuming, you know, they are able to get everything kind of aligned where like the talent on the team could go back to playing confidently, unlike what we've seen this year.
If you get the right coach and you get the right GM and you build the right culture, it all kind of flows together. It doesn't have to take 5 years.
100%. Let me see. Mike D's Nuts said, great call, Jay. There you go. Want to make sure we didn't miss anything here. I don't think we did. Brandon, thanks for hopping on, man. Excellent job by you. Really appreciate you coming on the show as always.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Hopefully next time we have a little bit more positive Jets news to talk about, but
that'd be
we
nice.
shall see.
That'd be nice. Where can people find you for those who don't know, though?
So I am still on Twitter at PPOC24, also on Blue Sky, just Brandyn Pokrass. If you guys are using that on
What
there.
is Blue Sky? That's like new.
It's a Twitter alternative. I just building the platform up there. Been covering FAU the whole year, so if you're interested in that, check out my work for the league winners. That's all on the website. They're on Twitter and Blue Sky as well at the League Winners or League Winners FB, one of those combinations. But yeah, just been a lot of interesting football this season, and hopefully it gets a little bit more normal. But I'm not exactly expecting it.
Still 6 games to go. There's going to be more madness. There always is.
Yeah, but thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
He's Brandyn Pokrass joining the show there. Great guy. Good to get Brandon on. First time in a while. Hit the like button if you're tuning in. Comments, questions, super chats. They cut the line. Reminder to support our sponsors, including Custom Bourbon Tours. Folks, if you're trying to book a vacation, go to CustomBourbonTours.com right now. If you're a bourbon drinker, the Kentucky Bourbon Trail is calling your name. CustomBourbonTours.com. Dan writes in, Allen's Golden Shower Dreams by Ben Johnson and Jared Goff. Thank you for that one, Dan. Let's get to more of your calls right now. Ladies and gentlemen, this guy's always got his eye on the prize. We say hello to David, who's next. Hey, David.
Hi, Jake. I think this is a legitimate question. With the consultants, picking general manager and coach, when it gets down to the end, do they present? And you might not know this, or maybe you can do your research on it. Do they come to the final conclusion? This is the general manager and coach you're going to take, or is there going to be options? Or I wonder how that works in the end, because it seems like there's a lot of really good candidates, on both ends of it.
My understanding, David, is that Rick Spielman, Tannenbaum, they give their recommendations, but they don't make the final decision. That's up to Woody Johnson. They'll say who they would hire or who their preference is, who their number one guy is for each, but they're not ultimately saying, all right, we're picking the coach and GM for you, and if you don't like it, too bad. Like, that's not how it works.
Okay. And so probably there will be, they will give him options.
Yeah, they'll vet the candidates and then be in on the interviews and give thoughts on how they thought each candidate did and if they're a fit or not.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
David, happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family, buddy.
Absolutely. David Taddeo checking in. Love it. Good call, David. We actually covered a little bit of this on the first show today. Rick Spielman, on his own podcast he does with CBS Sports, detailed his role with the Jets. So, David, hopefully this clip answers some of your questions.
Yeah, no, I was asked to join the 33rd team on Mike Tannenbaum, which is another organization, to come in and help the Jets go through the process of hiring the next general manager and head coach. Very similar to what I did last year. A lot of information gathering, a lot of contacts that I do have, a lot of guys that I know. I've interviewed a lot of the guys already currently that are going to end up being on the list. I'll probably
previously interviewed them, you mean?
Yes, I either previously interviewed them last year or through the summer. I also work as one of the side gigs, talking to some of these up and coming general managers and head coaches. Just agents will reach out and ask me to spend an hour and a half with their clients, just so, one, I get to know them, and two, try to give them some feedback on how they interview. Plus, it keeps me in the loop, on on all these new candidates coming in. And then you remember last May, I also had the privilege of working with the league office in their accelerator program, got to meet 20 coaches that some are ready, some aren't ready to be head coaches in the league, but just ways to continue in this accelerator program to educate the next upcoming head coaches over the next, maybe not this year or next year, but down the road, they should be future head coaches, and got an opportunity to know a lot of those guys. So just being able to contribute, I would kind of put it as, Ryan Wilson, like this podcast. I'm just a scout in the corner. I will give my opinion. I will help with the interviews. I will talk to a lot of sources out there, collect a lot of information, give the information, and then let the owner of the Jets and the organization make the final decisions on who their next head coach and general manager will be. So basically, a little bit of an informational gatherer, a little bit of my opinion on how they interview, and then you kick all that information over, working with Mike Tannenbaum, and then the ownership and the higher ups or the decision makers will take that information and then take it from there.
Mike Tannenbaum, the former Jets GM who works in the media, runs the 33rd team. You work with him there. So you guys will be spearheading that together, sounds like?
Yeah, he'll be the lead. They asked me to come in and assist on it, and probably with a little bit of my background in this area. I don't know if we'd call it an area of expertise, but I do have a little bit of knowledge
you did okay.
of people and the process.
I mean, I like that. Football guy. Go look at Rick Spielman's draft record, by the way. Pretty good. Pretty good. It wasn't just Justin Jefferson in the late 20s or mid-20s. All right, we'll wrap up the show shortly here unless anyone else calls in. We'll do a little Ask Me Anything as we did at the end of the first show. Like this question from Dan. What's the go-to Chipotle order? All right, here we go, Dan. Lock in. Always order in person. If you order off an app and do Grubhub or Uber Eats, you're getting clowned. They're scheming. They're skimping you on ingredients, all right? They're screwing you over. You walk in there, you look your Chipotle server in the eye, David Tadeo style, all right? Look them down. Hold them accountable. A bowl with brown rice and black beans. If you're really hungry, you can ask for more. They won't charge you. Half chicken, half steak. Trust me, they'll give you the same portion size as if they were if you just asked for chicken or you just asked for steak. You ask for half chicken, half steak, you're getting more food. Trust me on this one. I know. Then what I like is a little mild pico, sour cream, corn, cheese, guac, sometimes lettuce, but not really. I think their lettuce has regressed over the years. So here's what I do, though. All right, if you're getting your Chipotle to go, have them put the guac on first, then the cheese. Because when they put the bowl on, the guac's going to stick to the top of the bowl. You don't want that. So get the guac on first, then the cheese to cover it so it doesn't make a mess in the bowl. And then when you shake it and mix it in, it's not a mess when you open the bowl. So once again, a recap here. Hold your server accountable. Don't let them skimp you, all right? Look them in the eyes. Bowl. Brown rice, black beans, half chicken, half steak, mild pico, sour cream, corn, guac first, then cheese on top. You're ready to go. And if you really want to get frisky, how about a to-go cup? And maybe you don't put water in there. That's all I'm saying. I'm not telling you to do that. I'm just saying. It's another way around it. If they're going to charge you for guac, I think your drink should be free. I'm just saying. Johnny Boy says, Jake, thought about people saying bring Darnold or Geno back. No, thank you. Second question, thoughts on Soto's offer. I think it starts with an AAV of at least $47 million per year. I could see it being a 13 or 14 year contract. I think that's what we're talking about here. Like 680. So that'd be what, like a 13 or 14 $million deal if you do the math. I don't know if he's going to get 700 million though. I know that's been out there, maybe. Jets Chaos says 33rd team simply narrowing the list of candidates. Then it's all luck. Hope we pick the right guy. You got to hope. I mean, we thought we had our guy with Salah when he was hired. Remember, don't let him leave the building. He's going to go take the Lion job. Remember that? Like, you never know. You never know. Mo writes in, I asked my daughter how things were going with her pilot boyfriend. She said their relationship was up in the air. Thank you for that one. Three siblings. You wouldn't take Gino for 2 years right now. I guess I'm open to it, but what am I paying him? Like, I don't know. Also, why would Seattle let Gino go? What's their plan at quarterback then? I don't think I missed any super chats here. If you're watching live right now, thank you. Happy Thanksgiving Eve to all. We'll do potentially one last call, then we'll wrap up. Bit of a shorter show than normal. We gave you 2.5 hours earlier, so check that out if you want more content. Coach Brick is up next. Hello, Coach.
Howdy, everyone.
Coach.
Jake, the question here is other New York sports teams. I've got mine down here. Jets, Yankees, Islanders, Knicks.
Wow, we are aligned, Coach Brick, which is fascinating because a lot of people typically are not that for. Like it's a rare combo to have the four teams you and I both root for.
I'm a good-looking human from Long Island. Do you share the same DNA?
Well, but a lot of people from Long Island are typically what I like to call, and many people have called, gym fans: Jets, Islanders, Mets.
I mean,
then everyone's a Knicks fan, you know.
The Mets tortured everybody when I was a kid, so I'm not sure about that. Dad from Brooklyn, move out to Long Island. These are my teams.
Well, you've seen some championships with the Yankees, at least.
That's true, and that's what I tell people when they, console me over the Jets' current meltdown. I'm really hoping we get a win this weekend for Seattle, and I'm hoping that because I'm flying to Miami the week after, and I don't want them to be mathematically eliminated when I get there. I want to have a little bit more on the line, and I am looking forward to seeing Tua live. I haven't seen him sling the ball. So.
I'm trying to think if I've ever seen Tua play. I haven't seen him live either because remember he until last year was the first time he played the Jets. Because he had been hurt.
That's right, and we knocked out Mike White, I think, that other game, and right.
No, it was Teddy Bridgewater, and then Skylar Thompson came in. I was actually at that game. I was still in Houston then, but I flew in for that one.
Yeah, and someone in the chat was asking me about Zach truthers, and I I'm not a Zach Wilson, I'm not his number one fan, but I was at that Houston game last year, and he was awesome.
Yeah,
he lit them up. It was his best game I've ever seen him play, and live or on TV.
I think it was his best game in a win, right? Because I think he played better against the Chiefs, but they lost that game.
That's true. I think he had that weird fumble or throwaway at the end that ended the game where we were marching and could have won. So I don't think he made any mistakes in Houston. I think that's the thing. So,
well, but if you remember, wasn't that game 0-0 at halftime, and then he had an amazing second half? The Texans game you're referring to?
Oh, that's possible. Yeah, it was.
That was the thing with Zach. Even his best games, right? And clearly was awesome overall in that game. They won going away. But he never – I can't remember a game he played 4 awesome quarters. Like Rodgers gave you 4 awesome quarters, for example, in that Patriot game this year. Like I can't remember a game 3 years Zach started where he gave you 4 awesome quarters.
I don't either. You mean like a full, complete, this is what we were hoping for with the number 2 pick?
Because let's be real, it was ugly at halftime of that Texans game. I remember it well. It was really ugly at halftime of that Chiefs game, and then he came out on fire in the second half that night too.
Yeah, I remember wasn't he out like Tank Dell got injured the week before, and we knocked CJ Stroud out in the first half or something like that, and then our defense was swarming. I don't know who could have played quarterback against the Jets defense last year at that Houston game. They big, huge step back this year on the Jets defense. Like to see that improve to mediocre for the rest of the year. That'd be nice.
Mediocre would be a big step. You're not wrong.
Right. And then, here we go. Here's Seattle traveling to the East Coast, and the Jets always find new ways to crash and burn. What's new? What haven't we seen on the bingo card yet?
I know. I mean, look, normally the Jets would be in a pretty good spot, right? West Coast team coming to their building, Jets off the bye, but when this team gets extra rest, they stink. So that's why I like Seattle this week.
I'm thinking about a money making, just put money against the Jets every week. That way I can be happy no matter what happens.
It's one way to do it. The old emotional hedge.
Exactly. And then also on the Garrett Wilson, I mean, he has got the attitude of a winner, and that is what you don't let go. I don't care if he hits 1,000 year. I care for him. That's what we need. That's a culture builder. That's a locker room guy. That's a guy who will call out his teammates in the locker room in private and not at the microphone. The microphone is all about what he can do better. It is exactly what we wanted Zach to do when he came out of that game and didn't quite take responsibility. Didn't understand. Garrett has been showing us that from day one. And if they have to overpay him, I don't care who the GM is. I'm happy with that.
Well, you get out in front of it because receiver money only goes up, and he might have an even better year next year, regardless who the quarterback is, because he'll be in his 4th year and he'll be comfortable. And I mean, he's proven he's quarterback proof. Look what he's dealt with his first 3 years. He's still as productive as any Jet receiver ever through their first 3 years. So, yeah, I'm with you, Coach. Excellent call. Garrett's a guy you pay. Now, with Sauce, you don't have to pay him yet. He's got his 4th year and the 5th year option. Let's see if he bounces back next year. Then you could pay him. Jermaine's coming off an injury. You don't need to pay him. Brees is interesting because he doesn't have the 5th year option, so this would be the last year of his deal next year. Maybe you could sign him early, right? He might be someone you have that conversation with, depending on what he wants, money-wise. But the only guy I like, and one of the first moves any new GM I believe should do is send a message to the locker room. Garrett Wilson's a leader. He's one of our core players. We're paying him. That's what I would do if I was a GM. If Rick Spielman and Mike Tannenbaum sat me down and said, Jake, what would you do as Jets GM first? I'm saying, guys, I'm signing Garrett Wilson long-term. Be one of my first moves. Folks, have a great Thanksgiving Eve. No drinking and driving. Be safe out there. Appreciate all the support. If you're a Patreon user, 25% off every merch item from now through Cyber Monday. So I want to thank everyone out there who supports me and allows me to do this show full time. If you missed the announcement at the top of the show, I literally found out right before I signed on. I'm hosting the Michael K. Show on Friday from 3 to 7. So tune in. First time doing afternoon drive in New York City. Pretty cool. I've done the morning show. I've done Bart and Hahn, but I've never done the K Show before. So I'm looking forward to it. So if you're in the car driving around on Black Friday, put on your radio, 8:80 a.m., or download the ESPN New York app. I'll share this with you guys. Mike Tannenbaum's coming on with us at 5 o'clock on Friday. You best believe I got some questions for Tannenbaum and this whole 33rd team. I'm going to say, Mike, you better get this right, all right? Or this fan base might strangle you. I will probably say that to him. Anyway, Tannenbaum at 5 on Friday on ESPN New York. I'll try and grab the audio and we'll put it on the YouTube channel, I'm sure, at some point. Thank you all for your support. If you're an Asmaniac going to the Islander game tonight, be on the lookout. Say hello if you see me. Enjoy your night. Happy Thanksgiving to all. Might squeeze in a show tomorrow morning, so be on the lookout for that. Have a good one, everybody. JETS, 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 Jets.
How was the dinner the other night? Did you see Charles there? He had to leave early because his mom wanted him home. Do you have any other words also you want to ask me?
What was your question to me?
Do you remember Sam and Darnold? He was good, but then I think he retired because he got old.
He's on the Vikings.
I wish I can get Charles's recipe for soup.
Me too.
Yeah, but anyway, Mourners, Knoble is alive. He's just not starting yet.
Where is
I don't know what happened. I don't know.
Lane, thanks for the time.
How do you feel about your matchup with Charles Gorman?
Oh, looks like a cartoon thing. He has good moves. So anyway, how do you feel about Milaka McCauley?
Who?
Milaka McCauley.
I think good. I think I feel confident about him going into the season.
All right, thank you.
Lane, thank you.
You're welcome.